Hi everybody, my name is Nic Harding and I'm so pleased to be with you today. Thank you for the invitation to join you on this particular occasion. I'm going to be speaking today a little bit about what it takes to sustain missional culture, activity, intention over the long term. Now that's hard to do because the tendency is always for mission to default back to the comfort zone where we actually just sit in our front rooms and talk over coffee but do nothing. So that's where we're going today. I'm going to give you two real keys for that. One is around personal development of missional lifestyle, and the other is about corporate developing of our communities so that they have a clear, sustained mission focus. That's where we're going today, and I hope that you will enjoy the ride with me. As I say, my name is Nic, I'm married, I've got 4 grown-up daughters, I have 8 grandchildren, and very briefly, in a former life, I used to be a medical doctor, a GP in the city of Bristol. But in 1991, myself, a group of 12 of us, moved to the city of Liverpool to plant a new church, which is what we did. And over the years, that grew from 12 people in a front room to about 1,000 adults and kids. And then I had the privilege of nearly 5 years ago handing that church on to a younger leader and a younger leadership team. And I get to do this stuff all around the country now, which is absolutely brilliant. So, how do we sustain a missional culture for the long term? So first of all, we're going to look at, as I've said, how that becomes personal lifestyle for us. Because at the end of the day, you know, a church can do all that it wants to do to sustain mission, but unless we as individuals are living that lifestyle, committed to it, and enjoying it, then ultimately the church can say all that it wants to say, it can organize all it wants to organize, but actually it's down to the individual and their desire to be missional and a lifestyle of mission that sustains it. So it's a simple thought, but it's absolutely crucial. And as we think about this, I want us to think first of all around the issue of identity, because for most people, mission is something that they kind of summon up a great deal of kind of willpower to engage in, whether it's kind of social action, feeding the poor mission, or whether it's going on the streets and talking to people about Jesus, or whether it's having a chat about spiritual things or about church over the water cooler at work. It takes that effort. What if we all thought about this as, this is who I am. I can't help myself, it's just what I do. And that's possible if we will actually start to view mission as a part of who we are rather than something we do. So you may remember in the book of Acts where Jesus said to his disciples, the Holy Spirit will come upon you and you will be my witnesses. Notice he says you will be my witnesses, not you will do witnessing. So it's all about who we are. Let's think about this for a moment, okay? So we're created in the image of God. I mean, what an incredible truth to spend a lifetime really trying to dig into and imagine. What does it mean to be created in God's image? Well, it means in some respects we're actually like him. And when we're trying to understand who we are, we need to go back to who he is. What kind of God is he? How does he work? And what's now true about us in the light of that? So let's think about God. Let's think about the fact that God is a missionary God. He's a God that sends Jesus into the world to make him known so that people can actually see what God is like in the person of Jesus. He's a missionary God. So, well, if we're made in his image, that makes us missionaries too. What about the fact that when Jesus was on earth, he said, well, when the Holy Spirit comes, he will bear witness to me. So God the Spirit is a God who bears witness to Jesus. That's part of who God is. We know that Paul, when he writes to the Corinthians, says that we are ambassadors for Christ. In other words, we are people of the highest office sent from another nation or kingdom into a foreign territory to represent that nation, that kingdom that we've come from. That's exactly what Jesus was. He was the highest possible representative of heaven sent to earth to represent God. That's why we also, made in his image, are called to be ambassadors wherever we go. We represent the King of Kings. We represent God himself because it's in our nature. We are hardwired as missionaries, as witnesses, as ambassadors. It's who we are. You know, when I started to get hold of this, it changed my whole attitude towards being missional in my life. And I started to think, well, if that's who I am, I just need to be myself. I need to get over my fears and my hang-ups about talking about Jesus, about sharing my faith with others, about being a witness in the way that I live my life so that it demonstrates something of God's love. Let's just get over it and let's figure out this is who I am. I get to do this. I haven't got to do it. I get to do it. What a great privilege. And so we could spend a lot longer thinking about identity, but I'd recommend that that's something to pray into, to think about, maybe discuss in some small groups. If this is who we are, how can we let ourselves out of the box to be who God has made us to be? So for me, I have to say that actually this new way of thinking has completely liberated me from any sense of pressure to perform, pressure to succeed, pressure to get it all right. I can just be myself, and I've never enjoyed living a missional lifestyle as much as I do right now. For me, it's just a normal part of everyday life. It's being who I am. So we want to think about how we grow this missional lifestyle. And I want to give you a few little ways of thinking about this that might hopefully be helpful to you. So I'm going to start with something that I call the disciple maker's journey. Okay, and as we think about the life that we've been called to, that Jesus invites us into, I want to think about 4 different stages that we can actually view our missional or missionary lifestyle as going through as we connect with people in our everyday worlds where we live, learn, work, or play. And the first stage is just connecting with people. How do we help ourselves and others just connect with people? So let's call that the first base, if you like. We'll call that connecting. And connecting is really simple. It's just saying hello. Whether you're walking the dog, taking the kids to school, wandering around the corridors of the office, hanging out at the gym, it's just saying, hi, how are you doing? It's just making those initial connections. And you never know where a simple greeting, a friendly face will lead you. Here's the thing about the connecting stage. We typically think we just need to make friends with a few people who don't yet know Jesus, and if we befriend them long enough, eventually they'll be somehow magically drawn into our world and will want to know Jesus for themselves. Now, having been around the block a few times, having made those kind of small elite friendships over many years, I want to say it doesn't often happen like that. It does occasionally, but not often. And so there's a little sub-journey we need to go on at the connecting stage, which is a mindset change, and it's from few to many. What I'm trying to say here is that we need to think about making many connections over a few months or a year, possibly hundreds of connections, just being friendly, saying hi. Because some of those connections will lead to conversations, and that's the second base. As you can see, this is really technical stuff. It's chatting, it's having a conversation, it's being friendly, it's finding out about the other person, it's being genuinely interested in their life and what they do, where they work, what they like, whether they're married or not. Any kind of information that shows you're genuinely interested in them, that leads to a conversation. Now, for most of us, that's not too difficult. Most of us can manage the first base. Most of us can get to second base. The tricky bit is this, and it's taking that conversation from a very natural conversation around the weather, around sport, around what's happening in your town or city, to a spiritual conversation. And we know that some people would definitely want that, others definitely wouldn't. But that's the sub-journey, if you like, at this stage. It's going from natural to spiritual conversations. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment about how we can do that very naturally. Once we've had a spiritual conversation with someone and we sense that, yeah, they seem to be interested, they're actually asking more questions, they're what I call leaning in. Then the next stage, the next base on this disciple maker's journey is inviting. Really simple. Come out for a drink, let's go for a coffee, come and have some food at our place, let's go to the pub together, let's go and hang out at the football game, whatever it is, we're inviting them to hang out with us, to do something with us. Again, once the friendship starts to grow, that's pretty normal. Most people will expect something like that to happen as a growing friendship evolves. But the challenging piece is to go from inviting from social contact to spiritual journey. And so we need to find ways of helping to create these stepping stones to faith for those who are interested. And we're not about pushing this on anybody, but we know that there are people who want to know, who want to find out more, and if they had the opportunity to discover a living, vibrant relationship with Jesus, would want to do that. And so we need to create stepping stones that they can go on a spiritual journey. Something like, in the UK, it would be an alpha course, would be the most typical thing. A way that people can actually explore faith in more depth. Often along that journey, people will come to faith. They will discover Jesus for themselves. Their faith will become real and they become a follower of Jesus. Not everybody does, but many, many will. And so the final base on this journey is multiplying. And what we're really looking for here is that a disciple becomes a disciple maker. They're someone who is also connecting with people who don't yet know Jesus. It's not rocket science, is it? It's really, really simple. But that simple outline can help people understand where they are on the disciple maker's journey, how to grow their friendship group to find people who are genuinely interested and want to know more, to invite them onto a spiritual journey, and for those who become followers of Jesus, to help them also become disciple makers. There's one piece left here, which is the thing that unlocks this whole journey, because it's easy to get stuck at any one stage. And it's this simple question to ask God at any point, at any stage of the journey. And the question is simple. It's what's next, Lord? Because God's intimately involved. He's incredibly interested in your friends. He's longing to reach out to them, and he wants to help you take any who want to on this journey. We just need to ask, okay, with George, I've had a great conversation with George at work, Lord, and I don't know what to do next. What's next, Lord? The moment you ask that question, something will drop into your mind. Ask him out for a drink. Invite him around for a meal. Ask him if he wants to chat more about spiritual things. Just a thought will drop into your head that enables you to take another step on that journey with your friend. That's the disciple maker's journey, and I think it's very, very simple. There'll be a little screenshot of that puts it all in one picture, and hopefully that will help all of your friends, all of your members of your church embrace more of a missional lifestyle with intentionality, because most people don't have intentionality about developing a missional or a missionary lifestyle, reaching out to others who are searching for God. This describes that journey and helps people keep moving, keep growing, keep moving forward, keep finding new people that want to know Jesus and inviting them on to that same journey. So just two other little keys I want to give you in terms of how we develop this missionary lifestyle. which all helps to build towards sustaining missional culture in our church. And of course, it is missional culture that we're after, not missional programs, activity, or structures. You know, culture's been defined as it's how we do things around here. And we want that to be the true for all of your church members as well as your church as a whole. So we want it to be like, talking to people about Jesus, inviting them out for a bite to eat, taking them on an alpha course, whatever it might be. That's what we do around here. It's our lifestyle. Okay, so the culture is what we're looking for. But two little other things that may help you, particularly on this stage of the journey. As we are making connections and having conversations, one of the things we're looking for are what we call people of peace. And I'm sure you're familiar with that idea. It comes from Luke 10, where Jesus sent his disciples out to towns and villages to preach the gospel, to heal the sick, and to stay with those who welcomed them in. And they were called the man of peace, or we call them people of peace. So people who want to know more. How do we find out those who are interested, those who are seeking, those who we do want to invest more time in? And it's very simple. I call it the 3 B's. Okay, the 3 B's are be friendly, be curious, and be ready. Be friendly is obvious, it's say hello to everyone. Be curious, it's express the love that God has had for you and filled your life with towards another person. Love on them by being genuinely interested in their lives. Ask them questions, find out about themselves. Because the probability is, if you've got long enough, sooner or later, they will actually ask you something about yourself. And it could be something like, just tell me about you, or it could be, so, you know, why do you work in that place? Or what brought you to this city? Some sort of question that allows you to respond with tell you what, can I just tell you my story? You know, most people are interested in other people's stories. Most people are just nosy. And so I must have said that dozens, if not hundreds of times, and people have never yet said no to me. And so I get to tell my story. And a very simple way of telling your story is to think of it around 6 words. We call it the 6-word story. How would you summarize your journey before you came to Christ, the piece around how you became a Christian, a follower of Jesus, and how your life has changed since? And so we think of 6 words. So my 6 words are buried alive, answered prayer, on fire. They could be 6 individual words, 3 pairs of words, or 1 sentence of 6 words, but there's something to hang your story on. And so I will talk about being buried alive at the age of 15 under 100 weights of sand on a beach, and how God rescued and saved me, how I met with God in that moment. I then go back to talk about how he answered the prayer of a selfish 8-year-old and totally got my attention before I ever knew anything about who he was. And then I'll go on to talk about just how life has been on fire since a 19-year-old that's just found God to be so real, answered so many prayers, broken in so many different ways, changed my life in so many wonderful ways. And I'll hang my story around those 3 couplets of words. So we say to people, figure out your 6 words, create some bullet points around that, and just practice telling your story. Most people don't know how to tell their story. They can't tell it without using religious language. Don't use religious language. Tell it like you're telling your best mate over a beer at the pub, over a coffee in the coffee shop. You never guess what happened to me. Tell your story and learn to do it within 3 minutes. Practice it, tell it within 3 minutes. You can use it all the time because that's the simplest way of taking a conversation from natural to spiritual. When you get the opportunity to say, tell you what, can I tell you my story? As soon as you tell your story, you will figure out whether the person that you are speaking to is interested or not, interested in spiritual things or not. And if they are, they'll probably say, oh, wow, that's amazing. I never knew that about you. Tell me some more. Or they'll ask you a specific question. So what actually happened when you prayed? And you'll find that they're leaning in to the conversation rather than leaning away or looking away. And so once you know that they're interested, they're asking questions in response to your story, then you know that this journey is likely to continue and one that you want to invest more time in. So the 3 B's, be friendly, be curious, and be ready. Be ready with your story, practice your story, tell your story. So the disciple maker's journey helps to keep us on track. And one of the things actually that's really important is that we do this together with others. That it's not just us lone rangers out on our own, doing our own thing, but we're part of a community of people doing this together. So in the missional community that Jenny and I lead, we've probably seen, 8 or 10 people come to faith as we've been working the whole disciple maker's journey with all of our friendship groups to see who God is drawing to himself, because God is always at work. He's always drawing people to himself, and we're just looking to find those people. I remember back in the early days, I met a close friend at medical school, and he got sick, and so I went to visit him, and we started talking, and the conversation quickly went from natural to spiritual. Was able to invite him to a church service where he gave his life to Jesus. And he's been my best friend for the last 45 years. When we moved to Liverpool, he and his whole family moved up to be with us as well. When I had my first general practice office, I was looking for a sign to put on the door, and I went to an industrial engraver. And I got chatting to the guy behind the counter who was making the sign for the medical practice. And he was interested because it was a red perspex one, not a brass plate. And as I got chatting to him, he seemed very friendly, and he was asking about myself, so I got to tell him bits of my story. And when I went to pick it up, again, he was there chatting to him. I didn't realize he was the owner at the time, but found out he was. Said, "Do you fancy coming out for a coffee?" So it was that social connection. So we had coffee together. We got on well, had a lot of fun together. Sooner or later, spiritual topics came up in the conversation, and we ended up inviting him and his wife to a little group where we were studying the Bible together, trying to see if they would be interested in knowing more about Jesus. Eventually, we got to invite them from there to an event, a Christian event in the center of the city, and that's where they gave their life to Jesus. He became a follower of Jesus, and he became a disciple maker. He started to see people in his place of work, the factory unit that he ran, which employed about 15 people. He saw 2 or 3 people give their lives to Jesus over the years. He went from disciple to disciple maker. So this is a journey that anybody can go on. Just last year, in fact, I was in the city of Edinburgh, and we were in a taxi, and a Pakistani taxi driver got chatting. I was sitting in the front seat. And so I was just being friendly, started to chat with him, and discovered that he was obviously spiritually searching. And so the conversation went very rapidly to spiritual things. So much so that he wanted to take my email address and stay in touch with me. And over the next few months, we connected by email. He had a lot of questions to ask, and on one occasion said, "Actually, I want to come and see you, Nick. I'm going to drive down from Edinburgh 4 hours to Liverpool to have a coffee with you because I've got lots of questions." And so we talked for hours. He went back to Edinburgh. We continued our email conversations. And eventually he emailed me and said, "Nick, I want to get baptized." And so, long story short, he came all the way down from Edinburgh. I went through a whole thorough explanation of what it meant to be a follower of Jesus. He said, "Yes, that's what I want. Yes, that's what I want." And so we took him to my friend, remember my friend who I met at medical school who's moved up to Liverpool with us, into his house. In his backyard, he has this most fantastic hot tub, and we baptized Adil in the hot tub. And that was the beginning of his journey. When he went back to Edinburgh, he got involved with a local church there. So it's just remembering that we are witnesses, we are ambassadors, we are those called and sent as missionaries. That's who we are. That we do it simply by being friendly, being curious, making connections, telling our stories, inviting people into relationship, to friendship, on a spiritual journey, to see those who want to become followers of Jesus also become disciple makers. But as I said, we do this together. And one of the things that we really encourage people to do is in their missional communities, maybe when they're praying in 2s or 3s, to say, look, who are the people that God's placed in your life right now who are spiritually open, who want to know more about Jesus? Pray for those people, and on a regular basis and with accountability to one another, we pray for people who God is drawing to himself, that they might discover the wonderful joy of being a follower of Jesus. So those two little things, prayer and accountability to one another for keeping intentional on that journey, really makes all the difference. That accountability actually is like the magic sauce. It really makes all the difference. Let's think just for a few moments about what it means to do this together as a community, to build that culture, that missionary culture, that missional lifestyle together as a community. Now, what I've been describing so far is what it looks like for us to be reaching out to individuals, we call them people of peace, who are leaning in to want to know more about Jesus, to reaching out to them where we live, learn, work or play. But then we are inviting them to meet our friends. We want to invite them into a place of where the community is having some fun together, playing football, having a barbecue, watching a film. We want them to meet our friends because we want them to be among us. They're our friends. We want them to be with our other friends. And they start to get to know other Christians in our missional community. Now, as the missional community, and there's a clue in the name, missional community, starts to think about how it's sustaining missional culture, there are two aspects to this that I want to mention, and both are equally important. So the first, I want to call it a common mission purpose. And the second, I want to call a shared missional purpose or missional focus. Now, every missional community should be defined by its missional focus or its missional purpose. In other words, people join that group because they say, yes, that's the place I want to be blessing, serving, reaching out to. That's the people group that I want to be among, whether it's asylum seekers or young families or elderly people, people in the arts community, wherever it might be, that's my missional focus, that's my missional purpose. They agree to come together as a missional community around a common mission focus. And that's really important, and that's something that we do collectively. It's something we do that usually has a kind of project nature to it. So in my community, the one that Jenny and I lead, for example, it's our local patch, it's our area. And we will do litter picks, we will serve the local school, we'll do things to help clean up people's gardens. We just do things to bless and serve our neighbourhood because that's our common mission focus. And it tends to be project-based. In other words, something that we go and do together. One of the things that it allows us to do is make lots of new connections. Remember, connecting is the first stage on the journey. Well, sometimes where we work or where our family, there's a limited number of connections that we can make, but this puts us in a whole new territory where there's lots of new connections. And you could say that this is more on the organized end of the spectrum. The shared mission focus is what I've been talking about previously. It's where we all have our individual connections, where we live, learn, work and play, and then we introduce them to our friends. They come and hang out with us, they go on the barbecue, they do the walk through the forests, whatever it might be that we're doing together, we invite them to be with us, to be part of us. And it's shared because we share our friends with each other. It's a shared mission focus. We want those friends that we're making, those people of peace, to meet our friends because we think they'll get on well and they'll enjoy discovering more about Jesus through them too. So this starts off more individual, but it ends up being more collective. It happens through our everyday lifestyle where we're just hanging out. Initially, it's likely to be just family and the friends we make in our everyday life. And what we call this, if this is organized, we call this the organic. So this is the more spontaneous, informal, beginning at a personal, individual level, It's through the normal everyday lives that we lead. Often it's just family and friends. This side is the common focus, the common purpose that we share together. It's collective, it's project-based, and it makes lots of new connections for us. Now, both of these are equally important, and missional communities that sustain their missional zeal and energy and focus over the long term have learned to work both shared and common mission purpose. Because both, if you just have a common mission purpose and it's not individual lifestyles as well, then there isn't that kind of grassroots bubbling up of connections with people in their everyday lives, which is vital. If you just have shared focus but no common focus, where you do things together as a team, then that tends to be lost in the activities of the missional community. This keeps mission high on the agenda when we're serving together, reaching a people group or a place together, involved in a project together. It keeps mission high on the agenda, and it reminds us that that's what we're about. We're about blessing our neighborhoods. We're about finding people we can serve. We're about introducing others to Jesus as a community. So both of those are important. Now I want to encourage you with your missional communities to say, do we have both shared and common focus? Because if we don't, we may not be able to sustain mission in the long term. So a final thing to say about getting that sustained missional culture is it's a simple idea. I call it the 5 Ps. Okay, the 5 Ps of any multiplying missional expression of church. And it's around this idea that if we want our missional community to be healthy, growing, multiplying, because missional culture is a normal part, then here's a little template you can put over any missional community to see whether it's got the essential ingredients for that to happen. So I'm now going to try and draw a pentagon, so bear with me. Okay, so very simply, 5 Ps. Number 1, it's always going to be prayer. Everything has to be soaked, saturated, underpinned, founded in prayer. John Wesley, who knew a thing or two about sustaining missional purpose and focus, he said, God does nothing except in answer to prayer. So whether that's praying by ourselves, praying in 2s or 3s, praying as a whole community, prayer has to be the foundation of everything. The second thing is presence. In other words, we need to be present. It's an incarnation lifestyle that we're looking for. Just as Jesus came and lived among us, we need to live amongst the people we're reaching out to. We need to be blessing them. We need to be serving them. We need to be finding ways of loving on them, of meeting their needs in Jesus' name. So in our neighborhood, as I've said, that involves litter picking, garden cleaning, generally being around and being helpful. And one of the things that being present does is it allows us to make new connections. People get to know who we are. Oh, those are the guys that live down the road. They've got their group meets in their house, haven't they? Oh yeah, one of those prayed for me the other day. And do you know what? My shoulder's been so much better since they did that. Or aren't they the group that cleaned up the garden in the school, the local primary school? Yeah, them I think. You get known in your place or amongst your people when you are present. So it's an incarnational lifestyle of being present among those God has called you to reach in your community. So there's prayer, there's presence, and there's people of peace. Now we've talked about that, so I'm not going to spend any time there, but out of being present in our communities, we're looking for people God is drawing to himself. We're looking for those people of peace who are spiritually open. From there, we are also looking to create a pathway to faith. Because it's no good having people who are spiritually hungry, want to know more, and you really don't know what to do with them. Well, you need to create some mechanism by which they can take steps towards faith in Christ. Whether it's coming on a Sunday service, whether it's coming on a course, whether it's doing a Bible study, whatever it might be, a pathway to faith that allows you to invite people on that journey. And then as people come to faith, we want to be producing not just disciples, but disciple makers. So we need to have something in place that allows everyone in our community to understand how people who make that commitment to follow Christ become disciple makers themselves. The disciple maker's journey is clearly one of those things, but there are lots and lots of tools around discipleship, disciple making, that I'm sure you're familiar with, but they need to be in place. The missional community, if it's going to sustain mission in the long term, if it's going to grow, if it's going to multiply, has to have all of those 5 pieces of the jigsaw in place. That's your best chance of sustaining mission in the long term. First of all, equipping each member of your church to live a missional lifestyle out of an identity because they know who God is and who they are in the light of that. They develop a missional lifestyle. They go on the disciple maker's journey. And by working through the community, building a collective that not only shares all those connections people are making, but has common mission purpose, things they do together missionally that keeps mission high on the agenda. And then think about this simple template of the 5 Ps that allows people to think about, have we got all the essential ingredients in our community to grow, to multiply, and to sustain mission for the long term. I hope these thoughts are helpful. They could be expanded a whole lot more, but hopefully that's enough to get you thinking and to really see your missional communities become healthy places of growth, healthy places where people are coming to know Jesus, healthy places where people are growing as disciples and becoming disciple makers. God bless you.